remove that. Okay, well, good morning and good afternoon, maybe even good evening for some of you. I think there's some folks on here that were on earlier from Amsterdam. It's nice to have some folks from so far away. My name is Christopher Roy. I'm one of the board members of the festival. Would like to welcome you this morning. It is morning time here in To Level the territory. We're at Nuu-chah-nulth Point. We are here for our session this morning is Chapat's traditional canoe carving in บํuuc tribal parks with the renowned, the legendary Joe Martin. And this morning, we are also going to be screening a short film by Gisele Martin to start our session. Gisele is here, and I'd like to just hand it over to her for a little introduction to the film. We're going to watch this together here in Zoom. While not ideal, that's the way we're going to do it to keep us all here together. And then we're going to hear from Joe and Gisele after the film and have a little talk and hear from them a little bit about their work as stewards of these lands and protectors, warriors, artists, culture makers, language holders, and probably many other things, maybe some humor as well in there if we have good fortune. So Gisele, good morning. Nice to see you. Could you please offer a little introduction to the film, to the video that you've done that we're going to watch here this morning? Pleco.
Ľaʔuukʷiʔath Łaʔuukʷiʔath he sakwistas mahdi ehozet. My name's llaʔuuk. I'm from the house of Ehozet and from llаʔuukʷiʔath Nation. Joe's my dad. I was asked to film in preparation for the Carving on the Edge Festival, and it's been a bit of a mad rush, but I did get to see the canoe on the first day, and then a week later, and then another week later, and then another week later. Got a bunch of footage, and then put it into the short video. The beginning of the video, I didn't write down, when you first see a person on a video, there's like their name and their title in the corner. And when my dad was introducing himself in our language, I didn't translate it. I didn't write his name. I was struck by like, we speak orally, and I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to try to write it in English or in phonetic letters on the screen. Dad's made a lot of canoes through my life that I've gotten to witness. I know I lost track and he lost track somewhere around 92. And that was a few years back. He said he was going to retire from canoe making. His shoulder joints were getting sore from carving over and over and getting worn out. And then he just got busier than ever making canoes since he retired. So I am just starting to make videos, though actually thinking back on it, I chuckled because I remember the first time Dad steamed a canoe, he kind of assigned me to be the photographer and videographer. And he was like, here, hold this camera, film, take photos. And so it just struck me. I was like, wow, my photography journey has kind of been moved along by my dad also since I was a little kid. But the shots in this film are mostly just of this canoe being carved, and then at the end there's a little bit of other canoes that he has carved in some youth trips we did. But there's so much more material out there, and this canoe that is being carved right now is a special canoe. It's a queer canoe, which may be the first Nuu-chah-nulth queer canoe, and it's going to receive a queer name. There is an article about it in the Łaʔuukʷiʔath newspaper under the title "Carving a Canoe," carving a dugout canoe in the forest. Łaʔuukʷiʔath newspaper, and I think the Łaʔuukʷiʔath hopefully will start using gender-neutral pronouns in upcoming years. In our language, we have gender-neutral pronouns. It's not always she, he, and it. Actually, it's not just gender neutral. It's objectification neutral. He, she, or it, she, or he are just ish. All things are alive. And the canoes are alive. The canoes are alive as well. Every single canoe that Dad's carved and that my uncles have carved have their own personality. They're incredibly unique. They have characters and quirks, and they have huge history in the grain of the wood and the thousands of years of salmon that came back and nourished those trees over the years. So this is just a short little video, but there's a lot of other footage that has been taken by Jules Valine and her friend Grace, and they're going to put out another video specifically about this canoe and its queer life, I think, hopefully this summer. So please watch for that one and more upcoming films. And thank you for watching my first ever video. Choo.
O classes to talk quiznapsit, is taxes llaʔuukʷiʔath, mahte was a class, ut is ahniha with Nuu-chah-nulth o class. Umatuk mahsas apaciił, ahatla hit daxlis, is taxes aya ha hope chumis, is taxes llaʔuukʷiʔath. I'm going to talk about the teachings of canoe buildings in the forest. When my late grandfather and my father were here, they told me about making canoes, that the taking of a tree like this was not just to go there any old time. And you know, when you look around here, it's beautiful in the forest here, and I really do love it here. And in the background, we hear those ravens and all the other birds that are here that are celebrating the returning of the springtime. Trees would never be cut in the springtime or in the summertime because there are birds which may be nesting up there, which we cannot see from here. Look into any of these trees here, we cannot see what's up there. And the birds may be nesting. And it was told by my father and my grandfather that we have a great respect for these creatures. Our connectedness to the forests and how our people celebrate it, and it gives me a great joy today to listen to those birds back there. That, you know, it's a beautiful day here, and to hear those birds, you know, this here, being in the forest like this was also it's our church. You know, this is where our people learned many things of the connectedness to the land. And I feel that is why it was very important that people used the resources very wisely here. Was, you know, when we harvested things out of the forest, it was very important to be very mindful of all the things that are around, everything. Each time I have carved canoes in the forest with groups of people, they have really appreciated being in the forest, and it really makes a kind of like a camaraderie when people come in here and we can carve here in a place such as this. It is really peaceful, so peaceful. It really gives me a great feeling of peace to be right here. Right here, it's incredible. And I want to share more of that with other peoples who may be interested in carving canoes and learning the protocols of carving a canoe. The name that I carry, Łaʔuukʷiʔath, it certainly does come with a responsibility about teaching the laws of the land and to listen to the creatures that are here today. And it's a thing that a place like this is one of the best places to teach that, is being out here in the forest. To find a cedar tree, it is interconnected with the forest, because when we are here, we get to see so much more than if we're just sitting inside of a shop. Yeah, we would have came here and carved the hull of a canoe out, and then carried it out, slid it out through the bush down towards the beach. Yeah, these are things that only place we can really learn it is here. And when it was before Europeans arrived here, I'll often think about how on earth did our ancestors do those things. They had stone, bone, and fire. But beyond those tools, our roles and responsibilities to these forests and the way it all looks like this here, when you look all around here, the incredible beauty of this forest is just the way it is. It's to be passed on to our future generations, and we have to pass it on like that, and stop the destructive use by forest industry of these places. And it makes me very sad when I see shiploads and shiploads of wood going out across the ocean on those great big freighters that are being loaded in Port Alberni and in Duncan and in Nanaimo and all these other places where that may be happening. And so those are things that we all have to be concerned of. Our economies were here in these forests. Take only what we need. The elders told us that Mother Nature will provide for our needs, but not our greed. Just bump them this way. Dangerous. Yeah, we'll try to throw them right out of the way.
Sledgehammer.
Because we'll, I'm gonna get the wedges from the paw. There you go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go! Okay.
Okay. Now we can do that. Over 1 foot. Hey. Good. nature will provide for our needs.
But not our greed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having a look at this, and thank you so much, Gisele, for putting that together. Yeah, certainly that's a little glimpse of what it is to be able to make canoes. I learned ever since I was very, very young from my father and my grandfather. They did not leave me a choice to go or not. And it was like he said, get ready, we're going. It was not, do you want to come? Not like that at all. And so anyhow, there is quite a lot to selecting wood for canoe carving in the bush. And that's something that, yeah, like I say, I learned from my father and my grandfather. But certainly, of course, you know, some of the biggest parts of that are being in the forest and then going there and selecting the material that you need. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it was. It was like that. Our people, everyone had their education like that. And certainly the education was very different from Europeans' education. Much of that was passed down through the songs and the dances that our people got when they were in the forest, getting the materials that they needed for their lives, for the canoes, for the homes and the totem poles. And when the first European sailors arrived in the front of our village of lliaʔuukʷiʔath, they were really impressed on the size of wood that it took to build their homes. Great big logs. They were not just little things, they were huge. And they got those things out of the forest without the use of machinery that we know today. And for canoe making, they would carve those things right on the site, right there. I'd like to talk about the forest a bit. There are areas in the forest which are not very suitable for canoe making. If you just look there when you're going along, you'll see there's places where there are a lot of dead tops. And that is from the wind, which can blow for days and days like it used to here in the wintertime. We'd have storms that last for a week. But on the coast, it might be blowing 30 knots or something. But in the mountain valleys, where that wind has to funnel through there, it could be blowing like 60 knots or 70 knots in those places. So certainly, like just like on the ocean, there are places where there are bays which are calm in the ocean where we can go and take shelter if you're in a vessel. And it's like that in the forests as well. And those places in the forest where our people knew where they would have excellent wood for carving canoes. These folks knew this because they were always out on the land. They were not stuck and bound by the boundaries of a reservation that was forced upon us by the Indian Act and so on. But the teachings remained. My father and my grandfathers were canoe makers on both sides of my family, from my father as well as my mother. My mother's father, his name was llaʔuukʷiʔath. He was also a canoe maker. My father was a canoe maker, and so I learned, my brothers and I learned how to do this. So I like to talk about the forests in a way that, you know, when we talk about the weather and so on, you know, there's places in there where when it's really stormy out, there's some hidden pockets where it's not so stormy, and then the branches of trees that are falling and so on are not so prone to having dead tops in those places. And those are the areas where people would find the best red cedar for making the dugout canoes. And I just brought a little bit of cardboard here with me. And I want to just take this here and draw something on it here. Cedar trees, they're not always perfectly round. What you're going to find is that quite often the core of the tree can be way over here, like that. And it'll go like that. But inside of there may be broken knots in here like that. But normally, all these knots on this side here, and there'll be branches on the top, and most of the branches will be from here to here to here, where the sun rises and shines. And then that's where those branches will be. And so back in the former days, the people would have taken this here, and when they found when they decided where the center was going to be, they would put a rock there and a nail or a string like that, and that would level that. And so if you take that and you turn that over the other way, then you take that nail and you put that down there, and you must put that in. And if it's not level, then you got to roll it until it comes back level to there. And that was how they leveled things, was just by using a rock and a string. Of course, it's not a rock, it's a piece of lead. And anyways, those canoes of how I learned from my father and my grandfather, take this here and you cut the bottom off here. And this is going to make the bottom here, and then the bow stem will be right here, like that. And the sides get carved out like that. And then of course this sweeps down like that, and it comes, and the bow stem might be this high here, but the stern and the back will be about there. And this here way was just so that this kind of a hull here is far less to cracking in the sunshine. But because if it's carved this way here, like that, with the sides come up like that, this here is known as a flat grain canoe. And this here is far more prone to cracking in the sunlight than if it's carved this way here. But unfortunately, what has happened with a lot of the resources that belong in our houses, much of it has been taken away by the forest companies, and they are still targeting it today. Still targeting that best red cedar today. And that to me is a huge concern, because I don't know if we're going to ever have those trees for our future generations. And I think that it's really important that we do. Yeah, so you know, when I've been out here and looking at these canoes, when people were making them in the forest a long time ago, I want to tell you about one time I was working at the logging camp, and we're high up on the mountain above a place called Herbert Inland. And there was this fellow, he was a German fellow, he was the hook tender. And I was working down in rigging with two other fellows, and he hollered down the hill, "Joe Martin, come up here and help me." So I went hustling up the hill, which was, I don't know, maybe 800,000 feet up or whatever. I was puffing really hard when I got there, and here's the guy who's sitting on a log, like we Christian were sitting there about this far apart. And he says, "I want you to help me smoke this cigarette." I used to smoke cigarettes. I'm glad I quit. But anyway, so I said, okay. And we're sitting here smoking this cigarette, and we looked down from a mountain down to the village of apaciił, which was down there, and way out on the ocean. You could look over the mountains, over the islands, and way out onto the horizon of the ocean. And that guy said to me, he says, it must have been incredible when your ancestors were whale hunters, huh? So I looked at, yeah, I guess so. He says, look at that canoe over there. And that canoe was way up there in the mountains. And I looked at that thing. He said, you can stay here and look at that thing, and I'll go down and work with the guys. And I looked at that thing and said, wow. So, you know, when I've been moving, like you saw in the short video there, I have these tools that I can almost go and do it by myself. Of course I can do it by myself, but it's better if I have help. I'm getting older now, so. And anyway, the tools that I used to roll those logs around and so on, back in the days, they didn't have those things. And what they have? They had human power. When people, when they had so many people in the house and everyone, you know, would come out, and if someone asked you to come up the mountain today to go and help to roll a log over, you would go, because people were helping each other like that. And that's part of our cultural teachings, is to be Łaʔuukʷiʔath, to be helpful when people asked you to help, and you did that. And so first chance that I ever had anything to do with getting people to help me was I was carving on a canoe over there in the Powell River about 5 or 6 years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was now, but anyways, we had this big wide piece of wood. It was about that wide and about that thick and 22 feet long or something, and we were going to take a jack and then start rolling that thing over so we could start shaping this canoe. There was all these people standing up there, so it called them all over. It says shoulder to shoulder. We picked that thing up and we turned it over in like 1 minute. It was going to take me all morning with jacks and stuff, but you know, and anyhow, that just showed me how when we work together, we can do so much more. And of course, I have had a lot of very pleasurable experiences getting canoes out of the forest. One time there was, I don't know, about 30 people that showed up. Whoa, this is crazy. And I thought it was going to take us all day to get this canoe out of the forest, but it just took like 5 minutes because they put it on their shoulders and walked out with that thing. And it was incredible. And that really gave me a really good feeling in the heart to watch that, to feel the commitment people had to do something like that. It was incredible. So I really do love that kind of stuff. It really makes me feel good when that happens. And certainly I have been working on this canoe here with Joshua Watts and Ryan Savis. llaʔuukʷiʔath has been here a bit, but she has other commitments she had to go and take care of in Vancouver, so I was not there the entire time. But each day that we carved on this canoe in the forest, it was just incredible. Like the time that just flew by, it seriously just flew by. Every day just flew by, just because we were just having so much fun doing this and really enjoying every minute of it. Even if there was snow. There was like one morning we came down, there was like 6 inches of snow on top of the canoe. And yeah, other times I've had to work in the rain. We'd be working in the bush and have stretches of really nice weather for days and days, and then all of a sudden we'd have pouring rain, like just like somebody opened a valve full tilt and just let that rain pour down on us. And we had, I was working in carving on a canoe one time with my late brother, Gisele Martin, who I really miss. And I think I have John Wayne's on here. I think he's here today, but he was with us, and we had carved, there was 2 canoes that we were carving on together, the 3 of us. And he had kind of wrestled one to the edge of the river, the creek, Kudus Creek, and my brother Bill and I were still digging out on a canoe that was there. We were really busy doing that. And Wayne had gotten this canoe to the edge of the creek, and all we had to do was push it in and get in and float down. But anyhow, we just need a couple saplings. So we cut some saplings, 6 to 8 feet long or something. But I was really surprised when we got the canoe into the creek. We couldn't hit the bottom of the creek. Our poles were not long enough. So the river, of course, it had built up. It had gotten quite a bit of water in it that night. And so we're going down. And as we're going down, we're going faster and faster. And at one point, we were coming around a corner like that. And in front of us, like we're going pretty fast, there's absolutely no way we're going to stop this canoe. There was a hemlock that was across the creek like that. My brother Bill was in the front. I said, Bill, jump. He just jumped just in time. And the canoe just went down like that. And Bill was down. Bill got up, John Wayne went down. And then John Wayne got up and I went down and we went whoop, whoop, whoop. It was really funny. We're all laughing our heads out. But that was one of the most memorable times I ever had, taking a canoe out of the bush, floating it down the river. It turned into a little river. It was Kutus Creek. But yeah, so anyhow, there have been several other canoes that have gotten out of the forest like that. And I suppose I don't know what else you want to know about canoe making. There's lots that I like to share with people. Just working techniques and talking about that when we come into the forest, that it's really important to leave all our limbs intact. And so when I'm talking about those things, I like to refer to our cultural teachings a lot. And that is in the form of those things which we call a hinkitsum dance. I know that quite often those things they were used for teaching about awareness, to be aware always of all the things around you, and to be aware of each other to help you. And then you help me if I need it. And then so that's one of those things that come from there. And when I am working in the forest with people, I'm always wary and always watching out. And when we're rolling a log with those jacks, I'm always careful that thing is not going to slip. Because all it takes sometimes is just to be distracted for a moment, to not be here present. And so if it's like that, then yeah, we'll stop and talk and share about how that can go really wrong if we're not careful of how we work together. Because these canoes, when they're solid, they're lots of weight. It's a lot of weight. And I have carving canoes. Worst thing that ever happened to me was getting probably a piece of wood in the eye or a sliver. And then the ones that hurt the worst are the ones that go under the nail. Ouch. But that's the worst I've ever gotten. And I have always bought new first aid kits for starting new projects. And fortunately, the only thing I've ever taken out of those things is a Band-Aid. And so, it's stuff that sometimes I'll stop with our crew and I'll talk about the importance of doing something a certain way just so we don't lose a limb or something like that. So anyhow, I'm not sure how much time we have left here, but maybe we can have any answers or discussions or questions if anyone has anything like that. Certainly. I'll see you. I may be able to answer you. I might learn something from you as well.
We do have a question in the chat box, but Gisele, was there anything else you wanted to say? We have about 20 minutes left. And then, so if Gisele, you want to say a few words, and then we can get into the chat box with some questions.
I had lots of ideas, but they all just poof. Just thinking about, Dad, you were talking about the experience before of canoe carving with people who hadn't spent much time in the forest before, and getting there and being kind of angry and annoyed at the birds and stuff, and then over time just kind of coming home to the forest and how important of a process that is, and for us Nuu-chah-nulth to be connected to the forest and our identity in connection to the land here.
Thank you. I will talk about that. Yeah, I had, this was probably, oh gosh, 1995 or something like that. I can't remember exact year, but got a canoe commission to carve a canoe for ǳūkū, our neighbors to the south of us here. And there were 6 or 8 of them, and there were all several very young men. And they were a bit angry because when we got over to the village of Upholding, all we were doing was going into the boat shed to pick up the tools to go off into the forest and carve a canoe there. And those guys were upset about that at first. They were not happy about it. And when we were going into the forest, like every little bird or squirrel they see, they take a rock and throw it as hard as they can at that bird or squirrel. Oh no, oh gosh. But anyway, I didn't say anything. They didn't, fortunately, they didn't hit anything. But I remember the day that when we had worked all day and this canoe was upside down in the forest. We went home that evening and then we came back and we're both looking down onto this canoe as they came up. I saw at that moment that those guys changed. They changed and they stopped throwing rocks at the birds. That was amazing. It was an amazing transformation of what happened to them. And those guys, they started talking about paddling that canoe from llaʔuukʷiʔath all the way down to Ŋuukk:lūlith, which is about a 30-mile canoe paddle, which they did. They did it. And their late chief, Larry Jack, he'd been drinking, and the canoe came into the bay and he saw it that day. And every time I'd see late Lawrence Jack, Chief Lawrence Jack, he used to always thank me for doing that, because we never drank again after that. And so, that's one of the very best stories I have of sharing, with and carving in the forest. I have had several other times when I carved in the forest. I shared about one with you with my late brother Bill and John Wayne Roberts. I think he's on here today. And other ones were at the ǳ'uukʷiʔath canoe camp. We went into the forest and carved there. And then I also did it up in Gold River for the Nuu-chah-nulth. Went there and felled the trees right in the forest and carved right there. And there in those forests are lots of wildlife. There's deers and there's elk and there's cougars. And one day I was working all alone up there all day long, and they forgot to come and get me at night. And so the canoe was up off the ground a little bit. There was a little bit of a hole there. So I raked all the shavings in and I made myself a nest under there. And I heard a vehicle coming down the road. I went running down and this vehicle just drove right by. What the hell? It wasn't them. So I went back up and I crawled back in underneath the canoe, and I was prepared to spend the night until they showed up about 11:30 at night. They're hollering for me. They're, I'm sorry, I forgot you. But anyhow, those are some of the stories I've had there. Yeah, carving in the bush, really super peaceful. It's really, really nice to do that. Our ancestors did that, and that's the only way that they made canoes, was like that. And being in the forest, like I explained in the video, it is beautiful and peaceful. it's amazing to do that. It's something I really love doing. Thank you for pointing that out, Gisele. It's an incredible time. I think my friend Christopher came up to a couple of sites where I've been carving in the bush, and yeah, I really like those kind of things. So we'll be left with all our limbs too. All right. So
Thanks, Joe. We have quite a few questions in the chat box, and they're really amazing questions. I don't think we'll have a chance to get to all of them, so perhaps you want to just scan through and choose, you know, 2 or 3 that you'd like to respond to during the next 15 minutes.
let me see now. I find these things. Wayne Price, yeah, introduce yourself, please, Wayne.
Yes, I'm very honored to meet you. My name is Wayne G. Price. My Indian name is Ayantki. I come from the village of Cake. And on my father's side, I come from the village of Lla'aʔuukʷiʔath, Ushkitan Shark. And I'm very honored to be present in such great company. And I have the benefit of 12 dugouts under my belt, and preparing this summer to carve the 13th and then potentially the 14th as well. And all of the work that I do is under the banner of a healthy lifestyle, no alcohol, no drugs. And the dugouts I do are healing dugouts, and that as a vision in the sweat lodge, his creator told me that each chip represents a life we've lost to alcohol and drugs, and that each chip is a broken home, broken family. And we save all our chips, and we had a big ceremony at the end of the completion of the dugout. Offered all those chips up in a good way, so they can continue on their path. And very rewarding, just to have a oneness of being, to have reached that place in my life, especially after being a hard drinker myself. And honored to say I have 18 years recovery now, and 18 more. So I'm very honored to meet you. Cheese.
Oh. Yes, we'd like to also acknowledge Robin Rorick, who had the pleasure of carving the canoe also up there at Heshwood Lake. Robin Rorick, and for Pete's sake, his name please, Robin. Yeah.
Ralph, did you?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was really a lot of fun. We carved those canoes there, and at the end of the time, can't believe me. Like, no, we can't leave. It's so much fun. Yeah. Thank you. Other ones here? Thank you, Joe, for sharing your thoughts. I was wondering how does one comes to decide to become a canoe carver, your brother, yourself? Well, in that regard, it was when I was little, my dad didn't leave me a place to go or not, hunting, fishing, trapping, or canoe building. Just get ready, we're going. It wasn't, do you want to come? It was not like that at all. Just get ready, we're going. And that's basically how I learned it. And at the time, I really didn't like it. I didn't like being there feeding mosquitoes, and sitting there freezing my butt off. And all he had was, don't go beyond that tree or that rock, just stay here. And so I always remember one day he was using what we call a Łaʔuukʷiʔath. And I sit there and I watch and watch and watch. I always remember that when I picked it up, I said, how do you do it, Daddy? He had a big smile on his face. It's like this, just watch. And that's how I learned it. The only time that he wanted me to help him was when he was priming the canoe, when he wanted me to put a block there or something, because it was still solid. And he basically did it by himself. He did that by himself while with me along. I was just a boy then. But yeah, that's how I learned. And then of course, years later, I was had a canoe in the basement of the house where my daughter Gisele grew up before they had returned from Quebec. But the old man, late Chief Bennett Andrews, was there. And he was an exceptional carver, artist, boat builder himself. And he told me one time, he says, the best way to level a canoe is just by using a rock and a string. You can use anything. You can, if you have nothing else, you can use your glasses. Just tie it on, it'll hang straight down. Anything at all, tie it up and it'll hang straight down. So when you turn that canoe over, like I say, you just put that string back there and level it until it's straight. And yeah, and that's how I learned. And you know, my father, of course, he and my grandfathers, both sides of my family, my mom's dad and my dad's dad, were canoe makers as well. And yeah, of course, our extended family. So I do read sometimes in books where they say that it was originating from someone reviving a whole canoe culture. But the canoe culture has always been here. It's always been part of, you know, I believe the whole coast here, Haida, Tsimshian, Łaʔuukʷiʔath, Coast Salish, Nuu-chah-nulth peoples were always carvers and did all those things. However, in many of the places now, like for example in Duncan, the Cowichan people don't have access to the fine cedars that stood in their territories at one time. They don't have that anymore. And neither do the people in Neah Bay, Washington, and you know, many other places. And so I have had carved canoes for many different groups or tribes even that don't have the wood in their territories anymore. And I think that is why it's really important to support one another in regards to saving the old growth forests for our people, our generations that are coming behind us. We have a responsibility to them. So let's have a look here. Find my glasses again here. Is every canoe different in terms of how deep you cut the bow piece? Yeah, sometimes. Well, of course, these days here with the forest companies having taken all the best woods, a lot of times we're using second and third grade wood that our ancestors would not have even considered to do. The only reason that we're able to do that is because of the epoxies and glues that are very poisonous that we have to use to put these things together. And yeah, and it's like this one here had to have quite a deep bow piece attached onto because there was a rot that went down into it. And yeah, so those are some of the other reasons why. And on the back there you can see, can't really see this thing, but I had to cut a long piece out of it because of the rot that extended quite a ways in and to the sides. But I can still make a canoe out of this, and by the time it's done, you won't even know there was any rock there. Anyways, what else you got here? Traditional word for the inche were draw knives? No, we don't. I don't know what the people had stone, bone, and fire to begin with. Would you wear a flipped canoe on your head because it's capsized? LOL. Behave yourself, hello. No. Is there a best time to make a canoe? Less sap, etc. Well, actually, teachings that I received from my father and my grandfather about canoe making and cutting trees was only done in the fall and the winter time. And normally on a cedar that's maybe 800 or 1,000 years old, you find the sapwood might be about that thick. So it's going to have about that much sapwood. You have to take off the entire surface. It might be about there. And it varies. Different trees, it varies on them. And so normally you like to get rid of that, or because, you know, shaping a canoe like this, it eventually gets carved out. And so, yeah, that's what I would be able to say to you about that kind of thing. Yeah. And now these days, when I'm going into the forest to look for canoe material, I'll even check out the windfalls, because you know, I'd like to leave some of those trees for some of our future generations who may be inspired to do something like this. And I hope that there will be, in, you know, all up and down the coast, that people will be able to do this again, because that's one of the best things of being in the forest on our lands. So what do we have here?
Maybe just one last one, Joe.
Yeah. I heard of a group on northeast Vancouver Island that is identifying cedars of a minimum size with agreement with the log company, not allowing them to cut them. Do I know who that group is? I do not know. But yeah, there in these cases here, you know, the forest company or the Ministry of Forests, they always want me to get a permit. And I said, no, I don't have to ask you for a permit. It's not yours to give, it's ours. Our people have stewarded these lands forever. It's ours. I don't have to ask anybody for it. The only person that you know I will refer to, and that is the teachings that my father and grandfather left me, to, you know, be careful with this environment. If there's a salmon stream too close to that cedar that I want, no, I will not take that cedar. Or, you know, if there are other creatures that are there, wolves, bear dens, and so on, no. You know, those were the teachings of respect that our people have had for the creatures that are put here for us all to live and learn from. I think that we're probably come to the end here.
I think so.
If there's any last comments from anyone?
I just add that the forests are our ancestral gardens, and the practices that you're doing are much, much older than British Columbia or Canada. The BC Forestry Practices Code, you know, has made tree farm licenses in our territory without consulting us. And often the forests are called wilderness, but there's no such thing as wilderness here. They are our ancestral gardens, and the forest guardians who took care of those places made sure that we didn't take too much from the forest, that if we utilized an area, we wouldn't go back and take timbers for a period of 175 years to 250 years. That's a long turnover rate. That's far cry from the BC Forestry Practices Code of today. Shoo?
Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there. Let me first say, before we end, and to talk a little bit about what's coming. Thank you, Gisele, for your film and your sharing and being out in the forest and capturing the work there. That video will be generously shared in the Carving on the Edge Festival's YouTube account. If it was a little hard to watch, I would encourage you to go back and watch it again through Zoom. It's not ideal. And especially I would like to thank Joe and those of you who know Joe. Sorry. I'm getting a little choked up here. I have so much admiration for this man and everything he stands for and what he protects and defends, and And I have a tremendous amount of admiration for how much generosity and care he has for trying to teach young people in his community, and how much he goes out of his way to try and invite young people into the learning of not only this tradition and this craft, but a deeper understanding of protecting the place and the culture and the language and all of the beings and spirit that lives here. And so, Joe, I'd like to thank you for generously giving of your time, again, for being a board member of the festival, for sharing the stories you did here today, and with all the folks who are gathered here. Thank you to each of you who've joined us in the festival through this unusual journey of virtual carving festival. We're gathering here again at 1 o'clock. We are going to be joined by, we're going to do a presentation of works in the making from Dorian Reeves, Jane Woodbury, George Ramo, and Joshua Kruska. That'll be 1 p.m. back here live on 2021 Carving on the Edge virtual festival. Thank you all again. Thank you, Gisele. Thank you, Joe. Llaʔuukʷiʔath. June.